Throughout history, there have been people who have committed some of the most heinous crimes fathomable. For those crimes, they have been convicted and sentenced to death. Welcome to Death Row Executions, where we take a look into the lives of society's worst offenders. And now, your host, Air.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the 94th episode of Death Row Executions. Today's story is on Mark Sievers, who was sentenced to death for hiring people to kill his wife. Before I begin, I would like to give a big shout out to K.O. He was the first person to purchase the official Death Row Executions hoodie, and I think he looks great in it. Thank you, K.O., for your continued support and encouraging words. If anyone else is interested in checking out my merch, you can visit my website at deathrowexecutions.net. Mark Sievers was born on March 2, 1968 in Missouri to Michael Aaron and Bonnie Rita Sievers. He had at least two siblings, Stacy and Scott Sievers. In high school, Mark started his dating life, and it was in high school he met his soon-to-be best friend, Curtis Wright. Mark's girlfriend was friends with another girl who also happened to be the girlfriend of Curtis. They were all in 9th or 10th grade at the time. It was also around the time Mark's parents divorced, and Mark started calling his mother by her first name, Bonnie. And a quote from one of Mark's childhood friends: "I got the distinct feeling he took it out on Bonnie, because I remember being teens and he would talk to her and he would not call her mom. He'd say, 'Bonnie.' I'm like, 'She's mom.' 'No, she's Bonnie.' He would not call her mom. He disrespected her. I think he just doesn't respect women, really." Something changed in the family dynamics, and home life just wasn't the ideal place to be for Mark and his sibling. His sister Stacy, who was barely a teen, ran away from home to live with a partner, a male who did not treat her right, and she ended up getting addicted to drinking and using drugs. She was arrested, but a judge gave her the opportunity to go to rehab or jail. She chose to get clean, and she remained clean and ended up becoming really successful in her adult life. Curtis and Mark ended up graduating high school, but went off to different colleges. Their friendship was not as strong during this time because Curtis said that Mark's behavior was too much to handle. Curtis dropped out of college and ended up becoming a 5-time felon. Mark, on the other hand, was able to graduate and became a licensed practical nurse in Missouri. In 2003, he met a woman named Teresa Tottenham. Teresa Ann Grace Tottenham, born to John and Mary Tottenham in Connecticut, was a high school valedictorian who graduated with a bachelor's and eventually earned her Master's of Science degree in biology from Fairfield University. She was very smart, very eager to help, and to many, she was a good person. In the year 2000, Teresa married a man named Kenny Cousins just a year after they met. Kenny was 45 and Teresa was 31.
She's someone that motivated me. She was always, upbeat and encouraging.
Although the two divorced in 2003, they remained close because that's how Teresa was. She cared for others, and she also thought about others before thinking of herself.
If there was a month that went by where we hadn't spoken, she would text me or she would call me.
Teresa, standing at 4 feet 11 inches, actually saved 200-pound Kenny once before in the ocean as he was pulled away from an outgoing tide and drowning. The same year she divorced Kenny, she was talking with her friend Stacy Sievers, who was an acupuncturist who had previously treated her ex-husband Kenny. Stacy introduced her brother Mark Sievers to Teresa, and the two hit it off. They immediately got pregnant and decided to get married. Still close with her ex, Teresa phoned Kenny. "By the way, I'm pregnant. I never thought it would happen. It's kind of a miracle. And we're going to get married." Kenny felt that it was a shotgun wedding, but there was nothing he could do. After getting married in 2003, their first daughter was born. In 2005, Teresa and Mark bought their first home on Jarvis Road in Bonita Springs for $257,000 with the help of Mark's sister Stacy. A couple of years after buying their first home, they had their second daughter. In the family home was Teresa, Mark, their two daughters, Josephine and Carmela, and the family dogs. In 2008, Teresa became board certified by the American Academy of Anti-Aging, Regenerative, and Function Medicine. She was also able to start her own practice, and Mark would be hired as an office manager, but his main job was a stay-at-home dad. Teresa was the breadwinner, and Mark was able to handle certain job duties from home. In 2009, Mark's sister Stacy was dying from kidney disease and phoned Mark asking to see his daughters one last time. Mark's response was, "If you got $10,000. Stacy ended up dying in 2009 without having seen Mark's girls one last time. Stacy's partner, Barbara Guda, said that Mark was sickening and she had nothing good to say about Mark or any of his family members. This was a glimpse of the personality Mark had that would often push people away. In 2012, Teresa earned an MS in Metabolic and Nutritional Medicine from the University of South Florida. She remained dedicated to her studies and taught many about holistic medicine. As for Mark and Teresa's relationship, initially it was a happy one. They both had hundreds of steamy text messages between one another, with Mark calling Teresa mommy and sexy baby, and Teresa calling Mark daddy. "I love you, honey, with all my being" would be one of many things Mark would text Teresa. Their relationship, however, started to deteriorate, and the messages that were once hot and steamy and accepted by Teresa were now becoming a nuisance. One day, Mark had been texting Teresa too much, and she replied by saying, "I'm freaking trying to get ready." Mark's response, "I did not require a response. This was informational text. Excuse me, as if your phone's not sleeping anyway. Have a nice freaking day." Later on that same day, Teresa texted Mark with a crisis. She expressed that she wasn't where she wanted to be in life, and Mark did his best trying to console her in the text. "I'm tired of hoping," Teresa said. "I'm here beside you for what it's worth," Mark responded. In another text message exchange, Mark asked Teresa what she was wearing, and she ignored him. He texted again, "Why are you not even responding at all?" Teresa said her phone was acting up. Mark replied by saying, "I'm sorry, you're right. I was blaming you for something that had nothing to do with you. I wish I had not taken my frustration out on you." Teresa responded, "Thank you for that, because I really was trying to remain calm, and when you blame me, it just set me off." The very next day, Mark tried to initiate another sexually charged text. "Afternoon rendezvous? I want to take care of you," he said. After waiting and not getting a response for a while, Mark texted, "I guess your lack of response is an answer in and of itself." "Mark, I'm sorry, I'm in the middle of doing things," replied Teresa. Not only was the intimacy not the same as it once was, they were starting to struggle financially. Mark believed Teresa was cheating on him, and according to Mark, she told him that she wanted to leave him and take the kids with her. Mark had over 1,000 pages of calendar entries over the years of all of his sexual encounters with Teresa. He even wrote down how his wife told him she fantasized about being romantic with his best friend Curtis Wayne Wright. As you can see from the images here, Curtis and Mark looked almost identical. Not only did Teresa tell Mark of her wishes to be away and with someone else, she also encouraged him to do the same. In her own words, "Find another hot mama." Mark replied to her once in a text that he needed to get used to the idea of actually being with someone else. In May of 2015, Mark's friend Curtis, who was still living in Missouri, was about to get married. Curtis had two of his friends he considered his best men, and Mark was one of them. Mark traveled to Missouri alone without his wife and kids and let Curtis know that he needed to talk to him about something personal. He wasn't able to talk to Curtis in that moment because someone else was around, but he finally got that chance. He told Curtis that he wanted Teresa dead. He said that she was planning on leaving him and he didn't think Josephine and Carmela would be safe. He asked Curtis if he would be willing to kill Teresa, and Curtis agreed. He was recently deemed disabled, and he would work for Teresa and Mark remotely from his home state on their computer systems. Curtis would receive checks, and when he needed help, Mark was there to help. Mark had a $4.43 million life insurance policy out on his wife, and he offered Curtis $100,000 to complete the job. Curtis enjoyed his wedding with his best man by his side. All smiles the whole day, and after the wedding, it was time to plan for a murder. Five-time felon Curtis knew a man by the name of Jimmy Hammer Rogers. Curtis recruited his friend Jimmy to help him kill Teresa because Jimmy had confided in Curtis in the past about him committing similar acts. Curtis received a couple of checks totaling $2,000 for his computer work, and then he received a $600 check to help him make the trip to Florida to kill Teresa. Curtis had no money and needed a rental car, so the money was for the car, gas, and other supplies they would need for the murder. Mark came up with different scenarios for the murder. His first suggestion was that Curtis kill Teresa outside of her place of work. Curtis questioned that idea because someone could be walking outside with her or be a witness. Mark liked that plan even more because he said it would take any suspicion away from him, and if another person was killed, it would seem random. Still, Curtis did not like this plan. They eventually decided on killing Teresa inside of her family home and making it look like a robbery. It was nearly 2 months after Curtis's wedding that took place on May 2nd. By this time, the men had burner phones, and if they ever needed to discuss the murder or anything in relation to the crime, their code word used in their real phones was the word other. For example, one text read, "What's up, brother from other mother?" It was late June, and Mark, with his alibi intact, traveled to Connecticut with his family in order to celebrate Teresa's mother's birthday. While that was happening, Curtis and Jimmy were driving in their rental car to Florida. On their way to Florida, they stopped at a Walmart to buy items that they would need for the murder. Teresa, being the breadwinner she was, needed to return back to Florida before her family, so she purchased a solo plane ticket. Mark drove his wife to the airport, and on the way back to his daughters, the couple spoke on the phone. A short while after they hung up, Mark called Teresa via FaceTime. Teresa denied the call and texted Mark, "I'm not FaceTiming in an airport. I'm assuming it was a mistake." Mark replied by saying yes at 5:36 p.m. on June 28, 2015, and that was the last the couple ever spoke to each other again. Before Teresa made it home, Curtis and Jimmy hid in the garage. They had actually cased the house out earlier to make sure the family dogs would not bark at Jimmy. It was a little after 11 p.m. when the garage door opened and Teresa pulled into her garage. Curtis was startled and hid behind some boxes so he would not be spotted. Teresa then made it into the house and Curtis followed her. It was dark and Curtis accidentally kicked over the dog water bowl, which made a loud noise and startled Teresa. Curtis claimed that he wanted to have Teresa unconscious before she was killed, but those plans went out of the window when she was startled. Jimmy and Curtis were both wearing matching blue jumpsuits and baseball caps. I mentioned before that Mark and Curtis looked alike. Curtis said that Teresa most likely thought he was Mark because of the way she looked at him and how she asked why. Curtis and Jimmy both played a part in killing Teresa before leaving and heading back to Missouri. On the way back to Missouri, they both agreed to dump the clothes that they were wearing separately. The next day, on June 29th, Teresa did not show up for work. It was late and people were concerned because she had never been late to work before. Mark, still in Connecticut, phoned his neighbor asking if he would be able to go inside of their house to check on Teresa. The neighbor made it inside of the house, and that is when he discovered Teresa laying on the floor. He called 911 and told the dispatcher that Teresa was cold, unresponsive, and dead. Detectives Mike Down and David Levitt were assigned to the case, and they interviewed many people who were in Teresa's life. Mark was interviewed, and any time the detectives left the room, the detectives felt that Mark was playing to the camera and seemed very fake. Despite them thinking he was involved in the murder, they let him go so he could be with his family and plan Teresa's funeral. Teresa's funeral was on July 6th, and there were hundreds of people who attended the United Church in Naples. A few days later, detectives got a tip from someone in Missouri saying they had a lead and information on the murder of Teresa. The tip was strong enough for the detectives to fly to Missouri to interview the informant. The information they gathered led them to Curtis and Jimmy as possible suspects. Jimmy was interviewed but did not talk. He claimed he hated cops, so he was not okay with sharing anything. Curtis was interviewed, and he initially lied about killing Teresa or having any involvement. He claimed that he was homesick in bed and also working on his car. Detectives were able to search the rental vehicle, and they saw the car's GPS, which had a route from Jimmy's house to Teresa's house on Jarvis Road. Curtis and Jimmy deleted the route history, but they were unaware that the deleted information could be recovered. Detectives were then able to speak with Jimmy's girlfriend, Taylor Shoemaker. She told detectives that she knew Jimmy had something to do with the murder because she helped him dump a jumpsuit. She led detectives to the road where the clothes were dumped, and with that, Curtis and Jimmy were arrested. The Washington County Sheriff's Office had put a warrant out for Jimmy's arrest, and they apprehended him on August 25th. Curtis was arrested 2 days later on August 27th in Hillsborough, Missouri. He was taken to a Lee County jail, and he was officially charged with the murder of Teresa on November 16th. A Missouri judge ruled that Jimmy was guilty of breaking the terms of his 2011 guilty plea of unlawful possession of a firearm by a felon when it came to the fact that he helped kill Teresa. It wasn't until Curtis agreed to work with prosecutors that he came clean and confessed to Mark Sievers being the mastermind of the murder. On December 1st, the attorney's office finally released documents implicating Mark as being involved in having his wife killed. With this new information, Teresa's parents tried fighting for custody of her 2 young daughters, but on December 7, 2015, a judge denied a Department of Children and Family Services emergency sheltering petition, and the judge ruled that Mark would be allowed to keep custody of his young girls, despite the information being released to the public about him being involved in his wife's murder. The following year, on February 23, 2016, Jimmy was transferred to the same jail Curtis was being held, and a few days later, on February 26th, after more evidence was released tying Mark to the murder, he was finally arrested and charged with murder. In March 2016, Jimmy and Mark both pled not guilty to killing Teresa. While being held in jail, Mark requested to be released on bond and for his bond to be lower than what it was set at, but the judge denied his request. On May 4th, Mark and Jimmy were officially indicted on first-degree murder charges. Curtis was initially charged with first-degree murder, but he was off the hook because he agreed to testify against Mark and Jimmy and become the prosecutor's key witness. This changed his charge to second-degree murder. In this short clip, you can see Curtis testifying in court.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Can you please state your full name for the record?
Curtis Wayne Wright, Jr.
Junior?
Yes.
Can you please spell your last name for the record?
W-R-I-G-H-T.
Okay. Mr. Wright, who killed Dr. Teresa Sievers?
Jimmy Rogers and I physically did it, but Mark Sievers was also involved in the planning.
Why did you do it?
I was asked to do it.
By whom?
Mr. Sievers.
Is Mr. Sievers in court today?
Yes, he is.
Can you please point to Mr. Sievers and identify him by an article of clothing?
He's the middle gentleman there at the table. The darker colored jacket.
May the record reflect that the defendant is the middle gentleman in the darker colored jacket?
Let the record reflect he's identified Mr. Sievers.
As for Josephine and Carmela Sievers, Teresa's mother, Mary Ann Groves, was finally able to gain custody of them on May 11, 2016. The will of Teresa was also filed for probate to check its authenticity. Throughout the month of June, prosecutors made it known that they would be seeking the death penalty for both Mark and Jimmy. They also waived their rights to a speedy trial. Years had passed, and Jimmy Rogers was first up to be sentenced. He was found guilty. His charge was reduced to second-degree murder and trespassing. In November of 2019, Jimmy's defense team filed a motion for a new trial, claiming that they did not have access to witness statements. Their motion, however, was denied by a judge on November 8, 2019. A month later, Jimmy was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole on December 12, 2019 by Judge Bruce Kyle. Jimmy's older brother Jackie even testified in court, trying to save his brother from a harsh sentence. He claimed that their mother was schizophrenic and had drinking problems. He also claimed that their father was not the nicest person and would say harsh things, but he did die when Jimmy was 17 years old. At the time, Jackie was serving in Iraq, but was able to come home for family hardship and took care of Jimmy. He was quoted saying, "One of the biggest things I regret is that my brother needed more than I could give him at that time." This was Mark's statement to the judge before his sentence.
Is it okay if I refer to my notes?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Although a jury found me guilty, I am innocent of all charges, as I have maintained since this heinous crime took place. I love my wife, Teresa, and our two daughters, Josie and Carmi, with all my heart. Our girls have tragically lost their mommy, and now they're about to lose their daddy as well. Therefore, I respectfully ask the court for life, as not to compound their loss and suffering. I am grateful, however, that the court can only determine my fate on earth, while my soul is in God's hands, and God knows the truth. Although I cannot feel remorse for something I had absolutely nothing to do with, I am deeply saddened and forever heartbroken, to say the very least, that Teresa was taken from us.
On January 3, 2020, Mark was sentenced to death. Curtis was sentenced to 25 years in prison on Monday, February 10, 2020. He did receive the lesser sentence out of the three, but that did not stop Mary Ann Groves, Teresa's mother, from giving 3 separate victim impact statements and directing one of them towards Curtis. "You, Curtis Wayne Wright, have stolen this gift from us. You have robbed us of the most brilliant, unique, and compassionate doctor and human being." Curtis looked at her in the eyes and said, "I'm sorry." He wished that he had not taken any part in the murder of her daughter. Jail records indicate that Mark Sievers was released from jail at 2:08 p.m. and transferred to death row at Rayford Prison near Jacksonville, Florida. He is currently on death row and has yet to receive an execution date. Thank you all for watching another episode of Death Row Executions. Do you think it's fair that the mastermind gets a harsher sentence than the one who actually did the killing? I personally think that the killer was not threatened and could have made the choice to go to the police. Let me know what you guys think of this question and the story in the comments below.